About a year ago, I sold my Audi RS3, an amazingly capable car with insane performance and a gorgeous 5-cylinder soundtrack. But in my constant strive to experience everything that the automotive industry has to offer, I wanted to try something from another German powerhouse. I wanted something with the letters AMG. Now, on top of my list was a W205 C43S. But after a brief conversation with my bank account, those dreams were quickly dashed. Until I found this, a 2016 AMG C43 Coupe, often referred to as the baby brother to the C63.
Why'd you have to leave me heartless? Baby, you're my biggest problem. Even when the Silverado not starting and it's early in the morning, baby, it's still better than you. Why'd you have to leave me heartless? Heartless. Why'd you have to leave me heartless? Heartless.
So what has this toned down AMG been like to live with for the last 12 months? Why has it been labelled the fake AMG? And did I make a huge mistake opting for the diet version of my hero car? Well, join me for a full review, acceleration, drive test, and a full walk around of my 2016 AMG C43.
Leave me heartless. Baby, you're my biggest problem. Even when the Silverado not starting in it.
So let's talk about styling, and for me the W205 or the 4th generation C-Class is a beautiful car. With its classic lines, good proportions, it really does tend to look more expensive than it actually is. And after 10 years, I think this thing can still hold its own in the current market. Now the C43 benefited from larger wheels, lowered suspension, rear spoiler, and some fake quad exhaust pipes. But to be honest with you, it failed to distinguish itself from the regular C-Class, so it misses out on the brutish flared wheel arches and the bulging bonnet of its big brother. And it's very much the same on the interior. Aside from these performance seats and some smatterings of carbon fibre, the interior is very much in line with other C-Class models. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's generous use of high quality material like leather, Alcantara, aluminium trim finishes, and everything in here is rock solid. The column mounted gear shifter is a carryover as well from other models, and you either love it or you hate it. I can tolerate it, but I do miss being able to rest my hand here on something in the center console. The performance seats are fantastic with electronically controlled bolsters, memory seating, and they're heated for those chilly mornings. Running down the center console here, you have your switch gear, including a little wheel for your drive modes, of which you have 5. There's economy, comfort, sport, sport plus, and individual. You can also adjust individually your suspension. There are 3 settings for that. Your exhaust note, there are 2 settings for that, and your auto stop start feature. Coupe and cabriolet models have this neat feature that hands you the seatbelt from across your shoulder. Because reaching for your seatbelt is for peasants, right? You also have a central dial and touchpad to navigate the media system, but I have to say it's not 100% intuitive and it's starting to show its age a little bit. Which brings me onto some annoying things about this car. AMGs are supposed to look fat and wide, and the wheel fitment on the back of the C43 is shocking. I think there's about an inch between the wheel arch and the wheel, and I think Mercedes really missed a trick in giving it some unique and some fatter wheels. The C43 is notorious for tyre scrubbing at full lock at low speeds. I've experienced it as well in the E63, so it must be something to do with the 4MATIC system. But at full lock, especially if your tyres are sort of worn down, they'll actually scrub and skip across the road. I expect better from German engineering. We've all come to expect Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in our cars, but because of the vintage of this vehicle, you're not going to get it. That's why this one has been upgraded. The rev limiter on the C43 is unnecessarily violent. It literally just cuts all the power. So if you're doing a little bit of a traffic light drag strip in manual mode and you make a mistake, it could be very embarrassing. In Mercedes' infinite wisdom, they've made sure that whenever you change between drive mode, it completely forgets about the individual settings you've put on your exhaust, your auto stop start, or your suspension buttons. I suppose you could use individual mode to cover that off, but it is very infuriating. Anyway, it's not all bad. Here's some cool things about the C43. Got too much stuff in your hands when you get back to the car? Just kick under the bumper and you've got a remote boot release. And for some reason, you can also close it like that. Weird. The front brakes on the C43 are absolutely enormous. 360mm 4-pot calipers that will rip your face straight off. Considering its age, the 360-degree camera is excellent. For reversing with guidelines, you also have your bird's eye view, and if you go forwards to correct, you'll also get the front camera. Excellent. You get to feel like a fighter pilot with the heads-up display that shows you speed, gear, RPM, and even shift lights in Sports Plus mode. The exhaust also sounds pretty cool. Take a listen. Boo, soft limiters, boo. In terms of practicality, the coupe and the cabriolet are the worst of the bunch, but even then, you get a really good sized boot and you can always fold the seats flat for extra bulky items. If you want to carry extra stuff, of course the sedan and the wagon are the way to go. Under the boot here you will find a fix-a-flat kit, no spare wheel here. If you're looking for something to haul the family around, make sure that you go for the sedan or the wagon, because rear legroom in the coupe is really only suitable for short trips or short people. Are we even allowed to make that joke now? But at the heart of any AMG is its engine, and underneath the bonnet of the C43 is a 3-litre V6 twin turbo one, producing 270 kilowatts and 520 newton meters of torque. Matched to a switchable exhaust system, it certainly has a nice bark, but because of its sedate red line just above 6,000 RPM, it certainly isn't a screamer. But with that much torque on tap, acceleration in any gear feels like a smooth and effortless surge of power that can quickly get you into license suspending territory. 0 to 100 times are dealt with in 4.7 seconds, which we'll test out a little bit later, but unlike its big brother, you won't be leaving in a cloud of smoke thanks to its 4MATIC all-wheel drive system. Unfortunately, the C43 doesn't have launch control, which I suspect is a symptom of its 9G Tronic 9-speed automatic gearbox, but because of the relatively short ratios, you will get off the line very quickly indeed. The all-wheel drive system is biased 70% to the rear, but your inclination to want to steer with your right foot is going to be short-lived because the balance does remain quite neutral. That being said, turn-in is really sharp and mid-corner corrections are handled with ease. In fact, this car hides its 1,735 kilos really well. But with all that being said, let's go take it for a drive.
What a waste of love.
So starting out, the default drive mode is comfort, obviously, and everything is super quiet in here. A really insulated cabin. The exhaust is closed, the suspension is on its softest setting, the steering is light, and the throttle is really doughy. Pretty much everything you would expect from a C-Class. To extract any of the AMG DNA, you really need to head up into Sport or Sport Plus mode. If you go into Sport mode, the suspension now will go to its first setting, so sort of middle of the road. The steering gets a little bit more weighted and the throttle response is a little bit quicker. We still don't have the exhaust flaps open and the auto stop start is still on. But it's when you head up into Sports Plus mode that you really start to get a feel for what this car is capable of and what it's kind of designed to do. So now the suspension is in its stiffest setting. The steering is really quite weighted. The gearbox is doing upshifts as it heads into corners and as you decelerate. And of course the gear changes are a lot quicker as well. More importantly, the exhaust flaps are finally open. Oh, and you start getting those beautiful pops and cracks on the overrun. And in the gear changes themselves, you get these huge cracks. Let's see if we can get some happening. Here we go. And you see how violent the gear changes are as well. Of course, you can row the gears yourself. There's a little button down here, manual mode, which is actually quite hard to see from the driver's side. And now the steering wheel mounted paddle shifters are at your beck and call. Really sharp up changes. Oh, and those snaps on the exhaust with the overrun and the pops and burbles. Really, really good. The gear changes, I would say, are really fast. They're not dual clutch fast, but for an automatic, really good. If you were chasing 0 to 100 times, my recommendation would be to let the car row its own gears and don't be in manual mode. And that's because of that horrid rev cut. Let me demonstrate. Second gear. Oh. I mean, the way this thing cuts power is almost dangerous. And because the engine doesn't sound like it's really screaming, it's quite easy to miss shift. So yeah, if you're chasing drag times or you're trying to be a traffic light hero, just let the car do its own thing. Speaking of 0 to 100 times, let's go see what this thing can actually do. And it was at this point my microphone cut out, but with my specialist timing gear set up, I loaded up the throttle and went for it. I had taken traction control off, but it was about 30 degrees outside and I'd forgotten to switch the aircon off. Regardless, the time was 4.93 seconds. Not quite the claimed 4.7, but I think in better conditions I could get it down a couple of tenths. But when you're done being a hooligan, you can just pop it back into sport or comfort mode even, and the ability that this thing has just to eat up the miles is fantastic. It's a little bit of a shame because what it does is it actually places it, for me, in more of a GT class rather than a sports sedan class. And I'm not sure if that's where AMG were targeting this thing, but I feel that's where the C43 excels. Having said that, for me the highlight really is the engine. And that brings me onto a bit of a contentious issue that a lot of the enthusiasts have with the C43. Let me explain why they're wrong. The battle cry of many AMG enthusiasts has always been one man, one engine, referring to the hand-built nature of the power plant that sits under their bonnet. Enthusiasts will geek out over the little placard that has a name of the person that hand-built it, but if you open the bonnet of the C43, you won't find such a placard because this engine has been built by machines and not Hans von Schnitzelhausen. And the reason for this is that the C43 was actually born out of another C-Class model, the now discontinued C450. And so it's often labelled as the fake AMG, but I think that hate is misplaced. If you ask me, with modern manufacturing technologies, I'd prefer my engine was produced by a machine. And as we inevitably head into the world of EVs, I'm not sure your EQE 53 or your other AMG EV is going to be produced by old mate von Schnitzelhausen. And so if you think that the definition of an AMG is one man, one engine, I'm afraid the future is looking pretty bleak. So what are my final thoughts on the C43 AMG? Well, it lines up nicely against things like the Audi S5 and the BMW 340i. But unlike the other two Germans, I think AMG have really struggled to hit the middle ground between their base model and the hero car, with the C43 seemingly missing some key strands of AMG DNA. For me, it's a little bit more Bruce Banner than it is the Hulk. It's sublimely capable of luxury cruising and talented when it comes to spirited driving, but there's just something missing from the AMG formula, and for me it comes down to demeanor. Don't get me wrong, it's a gorgeous looking car, but it's never going to be the car that you park up in a car park where people go, oh, that's an AMG. Some fatter wheels and tyres, some power bulges on the bonnet, and a simple front splitter would go a long way to give this car the presence it deserves. But perhaps I'm not the target market for this car. If you're the sort of person that likes flying under the radar or camouflaging the potency that lies beneath the skin, and you're not too worried about having people know how much you've actually spent on a car, then I can't think of a better looking, more capable car than the AMG C43. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a comment below, give the video a like, and consider subscribing for more random car related content. I'll see you next time.
Why'd you have to leave me heartless? Baby, you're my biggest problem. Even
you can also close it like that. Why has it done that? You can close it like that as well. You can close it like that as well. I said you can close it like that as well.